Welcome to Recruit Recruiter. Katie McConnell Olson here, your resident Recruit consultant and Sherpa, guiding you through how to wreck everything with hiring and human capital processes. Brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and GrowthWise Search Partners, providing human capital and hiring solutions for rapid growth companies throughout the United States. And today we're talking about creating leverage in recruitment. So let's talk for a minute about what leverage and scalability means, right? We hear that term all the time. Oh, scale, are you scaling? Are you creating leverage? What does leverage mean simply? Kind of take a moment to think about that to yourself. Leverage means minimizing your input and maximizing your output, right? It means as little as input as possible and as much output as possible for whatever the process is. Now, in the case of recruiting, leverage and inputs and outputs, your inputs are candidates and man hours, and your outputs are interviews and hires. And I'll say that again. Your inputs are candidates and man hours, so how much time people are spending touching the candidate files, and your outputs are hires, right? Really simply put, pick it up, put it down. That's an input. An output is a hire, or let's call it a dispositioned candidate. Maybe we interviewed someone and they didn't take the offer, they didn't like the job, you didn't think they were a fit, something like that. At every stage of the process, we have inputs and we have outputs. So how do we wreck leverage in recruitment? In other words, how do we make non-leverage? Well, we do the opposite of leverage. We maximize our input and we minimize our output. Now that means tons and tons of man hours that go into a project for very little to no return. Simple as that. It's upside down leverage. It's anti-leverage. Yes, awesome new word. Writing that down. So we want to create as much contact as possible and as much touch point as possible with as little value as possible. So that means messaging candidates with little bits and pieces of information so that we pick up and put down their file as much as possible without actually moving them through the funnel. Now, that also means that we call them, we forget to gather all the information, we call them back. We do that. We can do the same thing with the interview process. Let's bring them in 3, 4, 5, 6 times because the first, 3 or 4 times we didn't gather all of that information. So we're going to up our man hours and increase the amount of time that it takes to move things through with minimizing the amount of value that we create at every stage. Only to tell them at the end of the interview process that it's a no-go, which we should do with another touch point. Now, if we hire them, we can create anti-leverage also by creating an onboarding experience that is in bits and pieces rather than kind of handling that all in one swoop with one email. As much contact as possible creates anti-leverage. I'm talking, it's not annoying to get all this in bits and pieces. It's relationship building, right? Over and over and over again, we rack up the man hours, which we're not going to track because we've talked about this before. Tracking hours and analytics and leverage in the recruiting process just makes no sense whatsoever. Even though we track that in other areas of the organization, we shouldn't track it in recruiting because it's just different. Anyway, if you don't have a strategy, it should be really easy to have anti-leverage and create lots of touch points because you won't have a good process workflow. So wrecking this also starts with a poor process workflow so that you don't have a quick and efficient funnel and you touch things unnecessarily over and over and over again without creating value because you don't have a clear value roadmap. So you can see how kind of all these things weave together to create anti-leverage. No streamlining of templates, no processes, no tracking of inputs or hours, just lots of touch points and very little results. And that is how you create anti-leverage in the recruiting process. Okay, so some of that may have resonated as things maybe you're currently doing, or maybe that's sort of triggering your thought process to go, oh, I could be creating more leverage in my recruiting process because of some of these things. So we're taking a satirical and kind of backwards and upside down look at what not to do to have a little bit of fun. And at the end of the day, these are a really important part of a holistic recruiting strategy that can generate results and create leverage, which is what we're all after in scalability in an organization. To take a deeper dive into how GrowthWise can help you optimize your hiring and really look at leverage in your internal recruiting processes, let's chat. Click the link to our website in the description below the video, and let's have a conversation about it. And don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. We'll see you next time for more helpful hints on how to wreck hiring and human capital.